When I was in college, I signed up for this class, Interpersonal Communication. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what the class was going to be about. Little did I know that this class would change my life. And this lecture that I'm going to give will be a brief summary of the skills that I learned in that class that, for me, transformed how I viewed my relationships and how I viewed my interactions with other people. Now, I'm not thinking that this is going to change your life, but I do hope that some of the lessons in this lecture apply to what you experience in your own lives. And more importantly, I hope that you can put some of these skills into practice and find more fulfillment in your interpersonal.
I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Okay, like I said, I don't think this lecture is going to change your life, but I do hope that there are some lessons in it that will help you in your interpersonal relationships. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain how our relationship choices affect our interpersonal interaction. You should also be able to describe some specific behaviors we can use to maintain healthy relationships. And finally, you should be able to identify strategies for addressing difficult interpersonal situations. Now, interpersonal relationships, they're messy. They are slimy, they are slippery, they are hard to get our hands around, and as soon as we get our hands around them, they change. We get new friends, or something in our life alters the relationship that we have with our friends, and it's constantly changing. So, what are some of those skills that we can use? I like to think about interpersonal relationships I like to think about the actions that we have in interpersonal relationships in 3 ways. First of all, we should be focusing on solving problems. Second, we should always strive for honesty. And finally, we should demonstrate an attitude of equality. Each of these behaviors, each of these approaches to relationships comes with its own value and comes with its own cost. So first of all, we start by solving problems. One of the easiest things to do when we face difficulty in a relationship is turn to the other person and start to blame them. We like to look at problems by blaming other people, and rarely is that an effective solution. Instead, when we have a problem in the relationship, the most effective response would be to address the problem without assigning blame. Figure out how we can fix this. If assigning blame is necessary, let's wait to do that until we don't have a fire anymore. When we get to a fire, if we're firefighters and we're at a fire, we need to work on fighting the fire. It doesn't matter who started it. We'll deal with that later. But right now, we need to figure out how we're going to get this fire out. That also means controlling your own behaviors and not the behaviors of other people. It's easy to want to tell people what to do. It's easy to see the solution and then start telling people, this is the solution that we need to take. This is the direction we need to go. All that does is build up frustration because other people might have a better idea. They might have a different idea. And we need to have that conversation instead of just pointing fingers. Well, what does that look like? What does solving problems look like? What is that action that we can take? Well, first of all, when you get into an argument, when you're in a group situation or when you're in a relationship and people start pointing fingers or assigning blame, redirect that finger pointing by defining the problem or offering the solution. Now, if you're the person to blame, the easiest thing to do here is to take responsibility and then start working on solving the problem. Yep, you're right. I screwed up. There's nothing we can do about it. It's my mistake. Let's move on. The other thing that you can do is describe the contribution you are going to make first, and then start asking for suggestions from other people. Or listen for other people's suggestions and provide what you are going to offer. Instead of telling people what they should do, suggest what you are willing to contribute. What can you do for the betterment of the group? And that's solving problems. So the first step that we have in developing healthy interpersonal relationships is putting our focus on solving problems instead of controlling other people. But the second thing that we can do to maintain healthy relationships is to be honest. Honesty is one of the most valuable tools in a relationship. I have a picture here of the Great Wall of China, and it took many, 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 many years and many hands to build that wall. Trust is like the Great Wall of China. It takes forever to build, but it takes just a few seconds to tear it down. About 20 years ago or so, the city of Detroit tore down the Hudson's Department building. See how quickly that tears down? Instantly. That's how trust works. There's another value to trust, though. Yeah, we like to talk about trust because it's cool, it's fun, it makes us feel good, but there's a value to it. When we are honest with others, those others are more likely to be honest with us. Now, I'm not telling you to trust everyone without even considering. What was it, Reagan that said trust but verify? We need to take that same approach. But the more that we are willing to trust other people, the more willing they are going to be to trust us. And the more we are honest to other people, the more they will be honest with us. And that is a strong and valuable tool in human relationships. The more I can trust you, the more I'm willing to be honest with you. And we can think about that in a professional setting. That in a professional setting, we have this idea that we're not supposed to tell our subordinates everything. And that might be true, but we should never lie to them. If we're in a position of power and we have information that goes to the other person, we should never lie to the other person. Even if that information is hard on the other person, even if that information hurts the other person, we should never lie. Nor should we ever lie to our superiors. There might be some short-term costs, but the long-term gain of true honesty is much more valuable than anything it costs in the short term. There's another part of honesty, and that's showing honest concern for the other person. When we are honest with the other person, we start to gain a concern for them because we start to see their actions through their lens. And that means that one of the other actions that we can take is to try and find the underlying causes of behaviors. If somebody starts showing up late to meetings, figure out what's causing their tardiness. What is the real problem? If you have that honesty there and that trust, it's a lot harder simply to give somebody a blanket statement of you're fired just because you missed a meeting or something. Find out what's going on. And before you dole out that punishment, figure out what's appropriate. I'm not saying blanket forgiveness for everything, but do recognize that we are people and we have challenges with which we live on a daily basis. And that brings us to the last one, demonstrating an attitude of equality. And this is a hard one for a lot of people. It takes a lot of work to get into a position of power, and when we're in that position, we're given a lot of responsibilities. And we often feel that those responsibilities are reliant upon our control. We rarely look to put that control in the hands of other people. But that's just what we need to do. We prefer to work for people that are humble. When our actions are affirmed by the individuals that we work with, we feel affirmed in the workplace. We feel affirmed in the relationship. When somebody demonstrates an attitude of inequality, I'm better than you, I'm more important than you, what we experience then is a disconfirming climate where we feel like we aren't valuable. Your boss isn't more important than you, nor are you more important than your boss. So we need to demonstrate an attitude of equality. We like to work for people that are willing to accept that they are just as good as we are. They might have worked a little bit longer. They might have demonstrated a little more competence to gain a little more responsibility than us, but that doesn't make them better. It just puts them in a different position with different responsibilities. But there's another important part of equality, and that's that the best ideas come from people who aren't us. We can often have good ideas, but when we have a diverse perspective and we recognize the value of the equality within that diverse perspective, we come up with great ideas. Scott Page, in his book The Difference, outlines all of these things, all of this value that comes from having these diverse opinions. But the only way we can get diverse opinions is by recognizing that we are all equal. We all have equal opinions. So what then do we do about it? How do we take action? How do we demonstrate equality? A couple things. First of all, allow and encourage open lines of feedback from subordinates. Give your boss some feedback. Ask your boss for feedback. Constantly ask how you're doing and figure out where you are and how you can be better. Because when you are asking about how you can improve, you're showing that person that you don't feel better than them, that you feel that you still have a ways to go. And that's the important part. And then avoid unnecessary demonstrations of power. Just because you're in a position of power doesn't mean you have to exercise it all the time. What it means is you have different responsibilities from other people. And it's okay to communicate, you know what? We can't do this because I have this responsibility. I was a youth director for a while, and there were times where I had to tell my youth, no, you can't do that because I have a responsibility to returning you alive to your parents. It's not me saying I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm stronger than you. It's me saying, look, I have a responsibility. My responsibility is to prevent you from doing stupid things that will get you killed. Instead, why don't we do something else over here? I'm not better than you, I'm not more important than you. I have different responsibilities. And that gets us to the end. Human relationships are challenging. And there are 3 ways that we can approach our relationships. 3 ways that we can deal with challenging situations by solving problems, demonstrating equality, and being honest. And the hardest part about human relationships is recognizing when these skills work. A lot of students have fought with me about how silly some of these suggestions are. For example, demonstrating an attitude of equality. If I'm their boss, I'm not supposed to be equal to them. Well, you are. And I'm not suggesting that you don't have different responsibilities. I'm simply suggesting that you're equal. You are a person, they are a person. Neither one of you is better than the other. The way we deal with challenging situations is by using these skills. And just like any other skill, it's going to feel a little awkward to use it at first. And we're going to get better at recognizing how we employ these skills and how these skills play out in relationships. It takes a long time to change bad habits. And it takes a long time to fix relationships that are broken. But these skills are a step in the right direction. It makes us look at relationships differently. So you should now be able to explain how our relationship choices affect interpersonal interaction. You should be able to describe some behaviors we can use to maintain healthy relationships and identify the strategies that we've talked about to address difficult interpersonal situations. And that's it. Like I said, this lecture, this information changed my life. I don't think it's going to change yours, but I hope at some level you experience some improvement in one of your relationships just because at one point you put one of these things into play. And that's all I got for you. I'll see you on the flip side.